We have invited you to brief you on issues, some of them you are very much aware of. And I will start from the genesis of what has now become a smear campaign against the person of the immediate past governor and our administration by individuals who have busied themselves with the struggle for the control of the resources of Delta. You recall very well, speaking now to the issue of the genesis, that ahead of the 2023 general elections, there were individuals that had their candidates in the PDP. They tried as much as possible to see how they can sell their candidates, which we consider their democratic right. We also reason that the management of the resources of the state and the sustenance of the accountability which Okowa has introduced in governance is something that is paramount, so that at the end of the day, the great people of Delta will have value for the resources that come in and that God has blessed us beneath the soil of our dear state. And in the course of that, Deltans converged on, particularly members of the PDP, on the Stephen Kersey Stadium. They elected the candidate of their choice, of the PDP, and at the end of the day, overwhelmingly, Right Honorable the Sheriff Oborowori won to become the candidate of the PDP. And you all saw what followed. Individuals who were involved in this struggle to want to have a grasp on the resources of our state proceeded to the law courts, went to the media, campaigned, and they went to the extent of evoking a whole lot of a campaign of calumny against both the person of Senator Dr. Okowa, the then governor, and they cast aspersion on the candidature of our present governor. But Deltans knew where they were coming from, just like it is said that the Egyptians you see today, you shall see no more. We crisscrossed the length and breadth of the 25 local government areas. Deltans put a seal on that nomination by members of the PDP, and overwhelmingly again, 24 out of 25 local government in the state voted in acceptance of the governor, Sheriff Oborowori. These individuals, even when they were members of the PDP, while that was happening, proceeded to pitch tent with the APC, the opposition party in the state. But that didn't work out. They went to the extent, if you recall, in the course of that election, to even try to ambush the results and some electoral officers in some of their local governments, but that did not also give them the victory that they were looking for, because the victory was not in their direction. And now the election is won and lost, and government is being formed. They have continued with the bitterness of losing that election. And rather than wait for the next election, which comes up in 2027, they have gone to court, which we grant them, because of course it is within their democratic right to so do. But rather than staying in the courts, they now decide to go to the media to begin to spew lies that are totally at variance with the reality. I needed to be able to take you through this genesis so that you'll be able to understand why we are where we are today. And where are we today? Where we are today is that these individuals have now continued to tell lies about the resources and the management of the resources of the state in the last 8 years of the Okowa-led administration. In the 8 years of Okowa-led administration, about 2.6 trillion naira was expended, both in the area of bringing capital projects across the 25 local government areas, and in the area of paying salaries and running government within these 8 years. Within this period of 8 years, our administration spent as much as 1.4 trillion in the recurrent part of the budget. That recurrent part of the budget speaks to the issues of salary payments and the day-to-day running of government, which you call overheads. And then about 998 billion was spent to bring about capital projects that you have seen that dot across the 25 local government areas in the state. And then what are the issues? The issues are that these individuals who, during their time in the past, were not able to bring commensurate development to our brothers and sisters in oil-bearing communities, are now the one alleging that we have shortchanged the oil-bearing communities. When we came in, and I want to say that you recall, we first of all ensured that there was an amendment to the Desopadec law. That amendment was with a view to reduce the tendency of just money sharing to individuals rather than developmental projects to communities. We now restructured it in such a way that you have executive members who are functional, while some other persons become commissioners representing ethnic groups within the oil-producing communities in the state. And to that extent, this alignment that we did by that amendment made it possible for us to take development to these oil-bearing communities. And largely, you can attest to the fact that the SOPADEP became much more responsive to the needs and aspirations of our brothers and sisters who live in these oil-bearing communities, to the extent that one of our Ijaw brothers mentioned that Okowa is the Ijaw governor that they have not seen before now. And you know what that means. Now, speaking to the issues of project and what we had given to the SOPADEP, we must understand that when you look at Section 162, Sub 2 of the Nigerian Constitution, it talks about derivation. And that derivation is to the extent of all resources, not even with respect to only oil. But in our own instance, we can talk about oil because that is the major resource that we have as a state. And that oil-producing states, we have derivation, not oil-producing communities alone. The reason is that the state exists as one government, and that money is made available to that government to be able to administer the state. Which is also why, in spite of the enormous resources that is generated from these oil-producing states, you are just entitled to, first of all, only 13% as derivation, while the rest is made available for the rest of the country, because we exist as a country called Nigeria. Oil-producing states are not taking the 100% because the government of Nigeria will have to run, pay salaries of even those who are from oil-producing states who are working at the central government, grade roads that will link up oil-producing states to non-oil-producing states, provide other facilities such as electricity to both oil-producing states and non-oil-producing states, provide security, both internal and external, to both oil-producing states and non-oil-producing states. Now you need to also cascade that to what happened in oil-producing states where you have oil-producing communities. If you decide that 100% of the resources that emanate from the resources that are drilled from oil-producing communities will be restricted to oil-producing communities, then how are we going to now link roads from both oil-producing communities to non-oil-producing communities? How will the government of that state run when indeed we have one government and those who are running the SOPADEP are also under that government? In our attempt to develop oil-bearing communities, we did not unilaterally leave or assign the development of oil-bearing communities to just the SOPADEP. As a government, while the SOPADEP was handling certain elements in the oil-bearing communities, our government was also very busy constructing roads. I dare say that we did not ask the SOPADEP to take over the responsibility of building the Ogeye floating market in the heart of the ocean in a place called Ogeye Dumuigu in Warri North local government area. That project cost us several billions. I also dare say that the paving of the roads in places like Okrenkuku, the construction of the Ugulaha, Sekobulu, Yokri Road, connecting Yobebe and all other places were not restricted to the SOPADEP. I also dare say that the issue of empowerment programs that we have evolved, cutting different platforms across the length and breadth of our state, touch people both in oil-bearing communities and those who are not in oil-bearing communities. And they were not restricted to the SOPADEP. So when individuals talk about 50% and made it look as if only 50% was given to oil-bearing communities, they are wrong. Because while the SOPADEP was tackling the developmental challenges of oil-bearing communities from one flank, as an administration, being the main government, we're also very busy reaching out to our kids and kin in oil-bearing communities, even as we address the developmental challenges of non-oil-bearing communities. And so when individuals, on account of this campaign of calumny, progressed in error and began to say that we did not give the SOPADEP as much as we needed to, they should realize that beyond the intervention of the SOPADEP, being an intervention agency, it did not in any way vitiate the power of the government to be able to also interject or come in to address those developmental challenges. But beyond that, let me also make it very, very clear that the administration of the state goes beyond the issue of just building one project here and there. Which is why, out of the 2.6 trillion that we spent within our 8 years of governance, 1.4, which is a large chunk of that money, was spent on the recurring part of the budget of the administration. And that touches everybody. You also recall the issue of the different empowerment platforms that we evolve in the course of time. Let us also talk about a road that links the 3 senatorial districts, which is the Asaba Isoko Ugeli Road. That road is the one major road, just like you have the Abo Eku Road. that also connects, links up to Warri, that touches the 3 senatorial districts. These are the only 2 roads that clearly connects the 3 senatorial districts, starting from the north, cutting through the central, and of course, ending up in the south. This road also cuts across both oil-bearing communities, largely, and non-oil-bearing communities. And this dualized road have taken over 50 billion within the 8 years of our administration. Over 50 billion. And so they need to come and ask us, how did we deploy the funds that were available to us? The different markets that we built as an administration. I feel happy saying so because all of you who are here followed us for these 8 years that we were in government and how we went about touching the lives of our people. The period that some of these persons who are embarking on this campaign of calumny were in office, how much development did they take to even these oil-bearing communities? How much peace do we have in these oil-bearing communities? We brought about peace in oil-bearing communities and non-oil-bearing communities and ditto the entire length and breadth of the 25 local government area of the state because we took the projects out of the pipelines and made it available on ground for people to see. And because our people saw the projects, they ended up saying, you mean government can work? And because they exclaimed government can work, it became very, very necessary for them to proceed to give us the kind of cooperation that we had in the 8 years of our administration. And you can bear testimony to the fact that Delta became one of the most peaceful states, not only in the Niger Delta, but in the entire country. That wasn't our lot in time past. And so Delta was always in the news for the good reasons. So these individuals whose attention was to see how they would have taken grasp of our resources and returned to old ways of avarice and greed, have now resorted to this campaign of calumny because they felt that by so doing, they would have painted us in dark colors. But unfortunately, our colors are very, very bright, just like the Northern Star. And so, the white apparel that Okowa wears and still adorned even after leaving office will remain ever bright in spite of the amount of mud they want to throw. We challenge them to come up with those funds they are talking about. We have mentioned very, very clearly the amount of resources that was at our disposal for the 8 years we were in office, how we deploy these resources to touch the length and breadth of our state, and we do so because for the 8 years we were in office, Okowa appeared before the House of Assembly 9 times. Why 9 times? Because when he came in, a month after he came in, he went to the House of Assembly to brief them on the state of affairs. And thereafter, 8 different budgets were prepared by administration, of course without prejudice to the supplementary budgets. These 8 different budgets paved the way for him to proceed to the House of Assembly. You must also know, for the benefit of those who are talking about the Desopadic law, that the appropriation law of the state in every year is also a law that needs to be respected. And the appropriation law clearly spelled out what we are to spend in each given fiscal year. In addition to even laying the foundation of what was done with the previous year. Before the governor, in each of these other 8 times that the governor appeared before the House of Assembly, to lay before the House of Assembly the appropriation bill, which eventually became law for the succeeding year, the governor will first of all give account of every penny that was spent in the previous year on account of what was provided in the appropriation law. And for journalists and any other person who do not want to progress along the line of being too lazy in information gathering, the information we put out there can be Googled, can be seen, can be verified on how the resources of the state were being spent year in, year out, by virtue of the appearance before the people of Delta as represented by the House of Assembly. If we have done that, why will anybody now proceed at a time like this, after we have left office, to begin to say that people were shortchanged? I can begin to name one by one in each of these oil-bearing communities what we did. You do know very well that we have built schools in virtually all the oil-bearing communities. We brought in hospitals that were hitherto not in existence in oil-bearing communities. I don't want to have this kind of dichotomy because that's what they want us to proceed to. Because in our governance, we were very, very general. When I mean general, we were very, very concerned about the developmental challenges confronting the 25 local government areas, albeit oil-bearing and non-oil-bearing. And so we do not want them to drag us into bringing the dichotomy that they foisted on us in time past, where people came and they were restricted to what I could call ethnocentric cocoon. And then they made us to talk about ethnic groups rather than talking about one Delta. We will resist the temptation to drag us into talking about certain communities Because by so doing, they are now bringing that dichotomy, which they fostered or not in time past, and Okowa broke that jinx, and we are very convinced that Oborowori will continue in that trajectory of ensuring that the Delta people are one. What they wanted is to be able to elevate certain ethnic groups above other ethnic groups, which Okowa in his administration dealt a very big blow and made everybody to come on the same table. To the extent that the Ijaw man, the Isoko man, the Shekiri man, the Anioma man, and of course the Urobo man became one, and we sang with one voice, speaking one Delta, and emphasizing the fact that Delta not the carry last. They will not take us back to those time of the Egyptians, because we have left that particular arena. And so, in taking a look at the many projects that we have done, including bridges that were built to link up communities that were hitherto abandoned, and we call it bridges of possibilities, because we're able to connect our people, kiss and kin, in both oil-bearing communities and non-oil-bearing communities. And so when they proceed to begin to engage in this their Makaba dance, we will tell them that we are not as idle as they are. That as an administration, we are proud of the things we have done. We will beat our chest anytime, any day, that we are very, very happy and glad that Oborowori, a man who was part and parcel of those achievements, has become the governor of the state today, and he will continue along that trajectory. And that their desire to want to have a grasp on our common patrimony for the purpose of giving to a few has failed ab initio, right from the time that the PDP converged on the Stephen Keshi Stadium to elect a candidate. And that candidate eventually was endorsed by the ceiling of the entire Delta to the extent that his victory was overwhelming. And so, my brothers and sisters, I will want you to tell them to get busy with much more productive ventures rather than this campaign of calumny. To remind them that the white apparel that Okowa adorns, both in character, in content, and in disposition, will remain white and bright as the northern star, irrespective of the amount of mud that they go about procuring with a view to looking for how to stain him. We will meet them wherever they want to meet us, but we will not lose sight of our desire to protect our people, which is what they are against. As time progresses, we will remind them that those their leaders who are sending them and funding them do not mean well for the state. Because if they did, by the time they had the opportunity of presiding over the affairs of this state, they would have fostered development across the length and breadth of the entire state. Asaba, the capital of Delta State, remained as a glorified local government area for the period that they were in office. We brought a whole lot of difference. And if that difference is what is making them feel uncomfortable, we ask them to repent and embrace modernity. So for us, we will continue to give account of what we have done. But we will remind them that the resources that were made available to Okowa in the 8 years of that administration are resources that we made also available to our people through infrastructure and prompt payment of salaries. In the 8 years of Okowa-led administration, about 2.6 trillion naira was expended, both in the area of bringing capital projects across the 25 local government areas, and in the area of paying salaries and running government within these 8 years. Don't forget, when we came in, the wage bill of this state was about 8 billion. But in the course of our administration, we embarked on a number of adjustments on account of the adjustment in salary, the living wage, or what you call minimum wage. That, of course, meant that we had some consequential adjustment. Those consequential adjustments also affected those who are being paid pensions. And so our wage bill rose to as much as 10 billion every month. Just calculate only just wage bill alone. For this period that we were in office, 48 plus 48 equals to 96. So which means for a period of 96 months that we had sway, if you are paying as much as 10 billion, that automatically would have given you 960 billion. That's even on the issue of just wage salary. Not to talk of other what we call overhead expenses, as well as the other cost of running government, fueling of vehicles, maintenance of A, B, C, D. Which is why I told you earlier that about 1.4 trillion was expended on the recurring part of our budget for these 8 years that we were in office. And that's 989 capital projects. And so, let them come and tell us which money they are looking for. We will show that money to them in either one project or in the improvement in the life of our people. The EFCC is a competent organization to be able to examine anything. Why are individuals raising issues that does not exist? They want to keep EFCC busy because they want to harass somebody. They have even gone to even the president. So why are they trying to use lies to harass why are they harassing the EFCC? Those who were arrested in time past and were tried, did anybody harass the EFCC before they were tried? The EFCC have had cause in time past to arrest members, those who have been in office in the past. For instance, you do know that even before 2015, I was about to open up a hotel in this town. Today, these individuals are claiming that the hotel belongs to Okowa. Okowa does not even have a penny in Jesdal Hotel. They claim that Okowa owns a bank. Okowa does not even have a shareholding in the banks they are talking about. They claim he has 13 companies. You remember when we were to start building the Professor Chike Edozie Secretariat? They claim that North China is a company that belongs to Okowa. After we have finished building now, they no longer remember because they know that the building has become so beautiful. They know that if they say it was built by Okowa, it will become even a plus that Okowa's company is doing well. Now they have realized that the company is no longer, because they have seen that the place is looking so beautiful. You covered them. You knew when they were doing press conference to say that the contract to build the secretariat is given to Okowa. And we asked them, at what point did Okowa become a Chinese man to begin to own a North China company? Anytime they want to come up with how to drag us backward, they come with stories. For you to understand who owns a company, we have a body called the Corporate Affairs Commission. In the Corporate Affairs Commission, you will have what they call Article of Association, Memorandum of Association, for you to know the promoters of a company. If you also go to CBN, you will know those who owns a bank. How can somebody just wake up one day and say, this is Okowa's bank, he owns the bank? His name is not there, the wife's name is not there, the children's name, even the uncles, all of them are not there, just because you are looking for what to grab. And because you know that it is always easy for members of the public to believe anything that is said against public officers. And so when you do things, they will think that you have done what they would have done. Okowa did not do what they would have done. Okowa did not do what they did. And Okowa will not do what they want to do, which is to seize the commonwealth of the state. Oborowori is a man that has a lot of integrity. He interrogates every expenditure. So they know that they cannot even also seize Oborowori for the purpose of having access to the state purse. All those reasons why they are fuming and looking for how to, they will have even gone to the extent of looking for how to conjure the Imo version. You know the Imo version. Our people have chosen. It is not the Supreme Court that will give us our governor. And they should look back and see what the Imo version has done to the entire Southeast. Okowa has come. He gave a good account of himself. And by the grace of God, God has helped us, a seamless transition that has produced Sheriff Oborowori, a man who will continue in the same stead, and of course, do more to advance data. So please, through you, tell them to get busy with much more productive ventures rather than looking for who to drag into the mud, because the mud is very, very far away from where we are.